All right, lots of first-time guests here on This Is Football. Lots of people have never worked with before, never met before. Have we met Ben Solak?
I think so. You're Clark? Your name is Clark? It's
Clark?
no. Oh,
Clark.
Kevin Clark.
C-L-A-R-K.
Oh,
C-L-A-R-K.
okay. So it's
Yeah,
Kevin first name. Sorry, it's first name, last name.
yeah.
Thanks, my bad.
We famously met at Eagles camp 7 years
Mhm.
ago, and I hope, I wish we could have just left it there. But then, then we potted every day for 4 years. No, Solak and I worked at the Ringer, a place we love very much. I do want to announce that the Raiders have signed Nathan Peterman. How does that change how you're viewing the season?
Oh man, do you feel a little bad for Raiders beat writers? Right? They're already watching the Aiden O'Connell Gardner Minshew battle. Now when QB3 steps up,
Well,
it's
they
Nathan
already
Peterman.
know Nathan Peterman, man.
Yeah.
That is well worn ground with the Raiders beat. He probably calling them up.
What year was Nathan Peterman? What the 5 touchdown game? Was that 28?
The 5 interception game?
Yeah, the 5 interception game.
Yeah. You said touchdown. You're thinking Nick Foles.
Oh, yeah, my bad.
No, it was 2018, and he was in the Raiders in 2019. If I'm not
2018.
mistaken.
We are
I believe
6
so.
seasons removed from Nathan Peterman 5 interception game. He's still out there kicking. What a guy.
I believe that's the case. If you ever want to know the biggest difference between college and pro football, it's that Nathan Peterman carved up a vintage Clemson defense for a win at Pittsburgh. Anytime anybody's always like, could this
That
team
last
beat an
second
NFL
game-winning
team?
field goal, huge game for Pitt. Yeah.
Anytime anybody floats, could Georgia beat the Titans? It's like, no, they couldn't. They would lose by 1,000,000 points because Nathan Peterman once beat Clemson. All right, we're gonna do. I'm really excited about it. It's guys, fellas who could swing the Super Bowl. We did 5 minutes of this record on a bad internet Zoom, and we went back and forth whether or not it was players or guys. We're broadening it to guys. Ben Solak, your first guy.
It's got to be guys because my first guy is Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And listen, Buffalo's in such a weird space right now in terms of how they're talked about because they lost to the Chiefs yet again in the postseason, knocked out by Mahomes, and they move on from Stephon Diggs and acrimonious departure, and he was never good for the team, and who's wide receiver one now? And this after a season in which Sean McDermott made a mid-season offensive coordinator change after making a surprising preseason defensive coordinator change, right?
Yes.
Leslie Frazier and Ken Dorsey both out of the building. Usually, Kevin, in the history of NFL, when a head coach fires his DC and his OC, it's because he's trying to remain the HC, right? I mean, you're trying to keep your job. And the Bills have not had the success in the postseason that you would expect of a team that is employing a top 2 quarterback in Josh Allen. But listen, they still have him. Josh Allen is still the guy who is there. Josh Allen gives you a chance to win on any given Sunday. I know this because they were out of the postseason and then battled their way back November, December, and got themselves into the dance once again. So I still very much believe in Josh, even without Stephon Diggs. I believe in some of the offensive changes, that the line's playing a lot better. They're running the ball well last season. And then defensively, they were still a top 10 unit in the league last year, despite accruing a tremendous amount of injury, because I still believe in Sean McDermott, the defensive coach. And so if I believe in McDermott coaching the defense and Josh Allen handling the offense, and if I can just buy myself a little bit of faith on Sean McDermott, the coaching decision maker, and then he got good coordinators into the building, guys who will push them over the edge, and if I can buy a little belief in Sean McDermott, the locker room manager, and moving on from Stephon Diggs will actually be good for this offense, which, again, you got to convince me of that a little bit, but it's fellas who can swing the Super Bowl. If Sean's right, and if Sean made the correct moves here, the Bills can still make a push for the Super Bowl, even while the vibes are this bad, because they got 17 at quarterback.
Couple things on that. Let's do an exercise I didn't prepare you for because I'm a bad host.
Okay.
The guys who are the highest paid quarterbacks who provide value in excess of the players you lose because of their salary. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Obviously, when you go from rookie contract to veteran contract to quarterback, you got to get rid of a lot of guys because you're talking about $30 million a year going to the quarterback extra that wasn't going there before. So above 40 million. So like Daniel Jones is a 40. Let's go above him. Okay. Trevor Lawrence, yes or no?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Jordan Love, yes.
Yes.
Joe Burrow when healthy, I think we both say yes. Tua, no.
No.
Jared Goff.
No.
No. Yeah, you don't have to do that. I know why you're doing that, but the answer is no. Justin Herbert.
Yes.
Lamar Jackson. Yes.
You can't say, "Oh, I know why you're doing that," but it's yes, no, and then go on Justin Herbert and pass it.
No, I thought about not saying yes. Lamar Jackson, yes.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts.
No.
Kyler Murray.
Oh no.
Deshaun Watson.
No.
Mahomes.
Yes.
That was the inverse of the Justin Herbert. For some reason, I left it open-ended, like you might say no.
Could it be crazy? Who knows?
Kirk Cousins.
No.
Josh Allen. Okay.
Yes.
So there are 6 guys making over $40 million a year who provide that value. In theory, I would say those 6 are always going to be a Super Bowl, always have the chance and a pathway to win the Super Bowl every single year because of how good they are at quarterback. Every single year. I would include, and that sounds crazy, I would include the Chargers in that just because of Jim Harbaugh, just because of Justin Herbert. If he was healthy, the foot thing worries me to the point that I would put him in a different bucket, but let's just put that aside for a second. The ability, I talked to Joe Brady 2 weeks ago in Pittsford, excuse me. And I said, what are you waking up every morning thinking about? And he said, we're trying to build an offense that can win in any way. And that could be the way they won against Dallas. That could be the way they won, they passing 50 times against the Dolphins. It can be completely different. And so I completely agree with you. It all runs through Josh Allen. And there's a real high floor here. And I saw a breakdown the other day that basically showed Sean McDermott always smashes his Vegas win total every single year. Just smashes right through it. He always exceeds expectations. I understand the argument, like the old Warren Buffett argument. If you were starting a business today, would it still exist, right? If you were hiring a coach for the Bills right now, like if you started every single year, would Sean McDermott be the coach of 2024 Bills? Maybe not. But I'm doing the Justin Herbert. But I understand he authored one of the best franchise turnarounds in history. He oversaw one of the best quarterback development tracks in history. And I still believe in that core and that roster, even without Stephon Diggs. I think we're completely in agreement here. What does Sean McDermott have to do in order to take that next step for you?
Yeah, so I think talking about the defensive side of the ball, where he certainly has the most influence, and some of the decisions that you make as a coach and the schemes that you work on in August, you work on in the first month of the season with vision of what offenses you're going to have to face in December and face in January and face in February. I think that's very important. You brought up that fact that, right, he always exceeds his win total. Sean McDermott does a tremendous job at aiming towards competency. You can even argue aiming towards excellence, right? We're okay, we're going to be a very good ball club. We're going to be a great team. But often in that pursuit, McDermott doesn't aim correctly and totally at the Lombardi trophy. It's nice to think, it's easy to trick ourselves into believing, first become a good team and then become a great team and then improve on the great team and then you'll be a championship team. And again, that's a helpful way to think about it. It's nice and simple. But the reality is that teams that make it to the Super Bowl and teams that win the Super Bowl often take more risks and try more diverse things and try more challenging things and are worse earlier in the season because they're developing young players and because they're willing to lose early games to experiment. Okay, what if we did this and that coverage? I always think back Brian Dawkins talking about the Jonathan Gannon Eagles defense when they lost to the Chiefs a couple years ago in the Super Bowl. And everybody said, they need to blitz Mahomes more. And Dawkins said they couldn't have. They don't practice it. They don't know how to do it. It's not in the bag. They didn't do it for all the regular seasons. They can't just yank it out in February. So McDermott, whose defenses tend to be 4 down, 7 in the back. We're playing zone coverage. We're better than you are. We're better coached than you are. We communicate. We have some stars. We win. That simple approach is very nice for beating average teams and middling teams and getting close games, one-score games against top AFC teams. But eventually you run into an offense in the AFC playoffs, especially, where they're just too good for you. They're better than your 11. You can't play this sort of simple ball. You need to be able to disguise coverages and roll guys and blitz and create matchups. And they have to invest more in that. They did a lot of that last year because of the injuries they had on defense. Hopefully that rolls forward into this year. They're more diverse. They're more dangerous when January football comes.
All right, here's my first one. I was going to actually pick an offensive lineman and decided that you could hear thousands of people just go into another podcast.
I would have booed you independent of the offensive lineman.
Literally hearing just thousands. It doesn't even make a noise when people go to a different podcast, but somehow it would if I listed an offensive lineman first. So I'm going with the quarterback. And this is a guy who's hype train. I feel like I've been on this. And I did TV the other day with Damian Woody, and he hopped on the bandwagon mid-show. And I said, buddy, join the club. I've been doing this since April. It's Anthony Richardson. And we did a couple of exercises over the past couple of months on this show and on others where we're talking about teams that can win the Super Bowl. And Anthony Richardson, if he plays to the potential that he showed last year and that he tested out at the combine, the athleticism he had, and also if Shane Steichen continues on that proof of concept, the Colts are going to be amazing. Amazing. Anthony Richardson can be really, really good. And it upsets me that we didn't get to see more than a month of Richardson, because I think a natural rival where CJ Stroud would have developed would be all we were talking about in the AFC. Like, I know we get bored with Mahomes and start picking out the teams to win the Super Bowl. By the way, the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. But like, I think that rivalry in that division has a real chance to take off. And then you talk about the offensive line. You talk about the skill guys. You know what I loved? I heard Michael Pittman on a podcast a couple months ago, and someone asked him, what's the definition of a number one receiver? And he said, it's a receiver who wins in every situation and in every game. Like, it's not, it travels. Like, and I feel like Pittman is developing into that. Injuries to Josh Downs, I don't think it's going to slow them down a whole lot on offense. A.B. Mitchell, I think, is going to be a stud. They draft well every single year. They have athletes all over the defense. The way Chris Ballard drafts, sometimes those guys develop late because it's all based on traits. I understand that. But the one thing I think was important, it was so small sample size, so I almost feel bad bringing it up, but I'm going to. Anthony Richardson was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the games he played against perfectly covered plays. So when the defense does their job, he still does his. And I think that, to me, I don't know if that's sticky year to year, but that to me just shows you that he has the real capability to be special.
So I agree Anthony Richardson could swing the AFC South. Feel like he can swing the Super Bowl? We're there with the Colts?
Yes. If Anthony Richardson is awesome, the Colts go win the Super Bowl.
Who's playing corner in Indianapolis? Juju Brents and Jalen Jones?
I'm looking right now. Jalen Jones and Juju Brents. Yep.
Who's playing safety? Julian Blackmon
and Nick Cross.
Nick Cross, who hurt Josh Downs in practice last week.
Yeah, I know. He got yelled at. He got kicked out of practice, I believe.
I was there. He got demoted. He took no snap. He was all first team snaps, hurt Josh Downs, and took no first team snaps for the remainder of the day. He was second, third team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they benched him in a later practice or something. Mm-hmm. But anyway, like, I think that secondary worries me a lot. And they were able to hide it and account for it by having really, really peak sack production last year.
I was about to say that the best secondary is their defensive line, which I know can be cope, but it can be enough if you have something back there. I mean, think about all the holes. It's not the same at all. Think about all the holes in the Texans defense last year, where they were playing bartenders at linebacker. Like, you can get away with it if you have somebody scoring 1 trillion points.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I do think that what Stroud did last year as a rookie for the Texans, like, on top of everything he did, like, oh, he's so good, accuracy and aggressiveness, like downfield passing, like all the usual stuff. It was unbelievable how polished he was. Like, there was that late game against Tampa, right, where he just in the fourth quarter just keeping them alive. Like, he was so good on third down. His polish was very veteran like. And that's the thing about Richardson. For as much as I like Richardson, is he does not yet have that veteran DNA in him where he like rides the ups and the downs super well. He's absolutely a volatile player. He is mercurial. He has bouts of bad inaccuracy that are like inexplicable. It's bad lower half mechanics, one snap, bad upper half mechanics, next snap it's bad eyes, the third snap. Like, Stroud was so smooth last year that I think that using that as an anchor can trick us into thinking that all young quarterbacks are able to do that. And I think that Richardson can do that in flashes. But like, if you're putting me in a week 18 game or even like in a playoff game where it's like, okay, like, I cannot afford my quarterback. I've got injuries on the offensive line. My wide receiver 1 is banged up. Their running game is really good. I can't afford my quarterback to give them any short fields. I can't afford my quarterback to make any mistakes for them. Richardson, just with this lack of experience, I would still be worried about that, even if he was great all season. And so I can't put the Colts up in Super Bowl air just yet, the way that you do.
Who is a better play caller?
Very few people. Brock Purdy does.
Matt Stafford does. I meant between those two players.
Oh, without question, Richardson. Shane Steichen, man, he's the dude.
I know, in his bag. I'm just saying, if you're telling me I have to put money on a team, I would pick the Texans. But I'm talking about guys who, if they are phenomenal, can swing an entire conference. That's a team.
I will say, like, I do think about the rookie season for Lamar, 2018, barely played, gadget guy, whatever. And then 2019, he obviously had way more college experience. But then 2019, his sophomore year, just comes in and just wins the MVP, explodes, bolts the Ravens, catapults.
Lamar was, by the way, a lot better. Lamar was a lot better in college than Anthony Richardson.
A lot more experience. And we also have to remember, he got to the playoffs and he got his teeth kicked in because playoff football is different. And so that's where my head's at with Richardson.
And the Chargers put up 75 defensive backs in the field and there was no second pitch.
Sorry, Shane Steichen, hopefully a little bit better at anticipating the changeup than Greg Roman was back in the day.
And then that Chargers team went to New England next week and just got their ass kicked. Remember that? It was like, Was that it was like the Patriots had a tell. I think that was the game where the Patriots had a tell and just never bothered to fix it because the Chargers didn't understand it. It was like a James White run pass tell, and like the just didn't work. It just the Patriots like, yeah, we're good. Like, Belichick knew they had a tell. And he was like, yeah, we'll get to it. It's like when you play a video game, you're like, yeah, I'm just running the same play over and over. It's working. Let's just keep going.
Ain't broke, don't fix it. That's the Shane Steichen motto right there.
PA slide and a play action slide in college football video gaming. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, what's your next one?
My next one is Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Eagles.
I have an Eagle.
Yeah, this is one where it's, look at the Eagles roster. Like, I brought up the Colts roster to throw water on your Colts. I was like, who's playing corner, who's playing safety? Look at the Eagles roster, and you're like, baby, buy the tickets, right? I mean, like, with the amount of talent that they have on the offensive line, obviously losing Jason Kelce is a big deal, but they've been drafting replacements. They've been filling the cupboards, trying to make sure they're ready for that, and they still have Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson on the line. They still have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and now Saquon Barkley as the weapons. Like, depth chart-wise on offense, it's unbelievable. Defense, they've had their departures, right? Absolutely, they have. Fletcher Cox retires. Javon Hargrave's at the building. You have 2 top 15 picks from Georgia, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, ready to go pick up the reins. You have Brandon Graham still rushing behind Josh Sweat and Bryce Huff, their addition of the offseason. They invest all that in the secondary. So Darius Slay and Quinion Mitchell and Keely Ringo and Isaiah Rodgers all fighting for the corner job. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is back to fight with Cooper DeJean for the safety job. Like, they just have so many dudes that it feels like, okay, Super Bowl roster, right? Well, we got to remember this team at 1-6 down the stretch last year, right? I mean, like the implosion
had
here,
no answers. No answers.
The 2023 Eagles are such an important case in point for when people say, listen, this roster's so talented, it can only get so bad. No. You have one of the most talented rosters in football. At any time in the NFL, it can get so much worse than you think.
You think you have a floor. You think you have a floor. And then I remember my wife had a friend who one day, they were in a New York City apartment. One day the floor just gave way and all their fell down, like just to the next floor. Like, the couch was gone. And like that happened to the Eagles. Like, you think you live in this apartment that is structurally sound because that's just the basics of what we come to expect from structural integrity. And then one day, bam, the couch is on 2B instead of 3B.
Yes, exactly.
And Nick Sirianni's a super going, I don't know what happened. It might go down. It might go down another floor. I don't know.
It's just such a common offseason refrain to be like, this roster is too talented to X. And it's like, no, there's no roster in the league that is ever too talented to X. You can always, get worse than you think. So here we are in the summer of 2024. And I'm like, well, the Eagles roster is very talented. They're so talented. They should be a Super Bowl team. Nick Sirianni, obviously, not able to put the fires out last year. And I think that if I wanted to just do all coaches, I could have done him the same way I did Sean McDermott, would have been fine. But I'm zeroing in on Jalen Hurts because Hurts has been pretty vocal. I think a little bit on the mic, and then definitely kind of behind closed doors, and a lot of the reporting that you've read, great reporting by Tim McManus last week. You've heard a lot of the quarterback wants the offense to be more complex. Jalen Hurts wants to throw middle of the field more, and they want to do more in the passing game, and just it wasn't coming. He wasn't getting it right. There's been a clear presentation from Hurts's camp of like, he deserves to have more on his plate in the offense. The offense should be more complex for him. He's asking for this. Well, okay. Brian Johnson's out the building. OC is gone. Kellen Moore's in the building. You want complex? We'll give you complex, brother. Kellen Moore offense. A lot of words, a lot of guys moving. We're doing it's not a small menu of passing concepts, it's a deep menu of passing concepts. There's a lot of reads in those passing concepts, just straight from the pocket, right? Like, this is the previous quarterbacks in this offense were Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert, 2 of the best processors in the league. This is big boy offense. Now that has to get married to Jalen Hurts, who's so good in the quarterback running game and so good playing 11-11 football and has always played in spread offenses, college-inspired offenses, RPO offenses, going from Lincoln Riley into a Shane Steichen offense, right? Like, obviously, Shane's still an NFL coach, but they were very RPO heavy. They were very shotgun heavy. It felt very collegiate. This is a big offensive change that the quarterback has very clearly been championing. I don't think it's going to be perfect in week 1. I think there's going to be growing pains. I'm going to reserve a lot of my judgment for the Eagles until we get into October football. But if Jalen Hurts is capable of taking on a greatly increased responsibility in the offense, especially with no Jason Kelce, you got to be in charge of protections now too. Such a huge increase in responsibility in the offense. If he can handle that, this team could be really, really good on offense. I think Vic Fangio will handle the defense. I think they're a Super Bowl contender. If Jalen Hurts can't do that, because we have not really seen him be in this pro-style offense before, if it's too much for him, and the blitzing issues remain, and the bailing out of the pocket too fast issues remain, We know just how bad this could be a 1-16. This could be a floor apartment down floor dropping sort of a team. So a huge swing in Philadelphia belongs to Jalen Hurts.
I will say the talent is so good that we can't fall below X. It's the Zach Wilson Jets thing. It's we know all we need is mediocre quarterback play and we can be a Super Bowl contender. And it's like, well, guess what you're going to get? Bad quarterback play again and again and again.
Yep.
Can I talk about Cam Jurgens, who's a part of this?
I would love for you to talk about Cam Jurgens, who's a part of this.
Who's one of my guys. So the biggest thing last year was not the biggest thing. There's a million things that you already outlined. One of the biggest things is their reaction to the blitz, which I would describe as no reaction. They just had no plan. The cover zero, just nothing ever happened for them. The offense is changing. The communication is changing. Jason Kelce has been a part of every protection call for 13 years. He's not, by the way, coming back because he just said he was 260 on Chris Long's podcast. I don't know if you saw that, but that is actually for a guy who's coming in every single week to work with Cam Jurgens. He's in the cafeteria. It is significant that he's 260 pounds because it rules out the idea that he would accept a call if it wasn't working. So Cam Jurgens will be your center this year. Blaine Johnson, just reading the comments, said he was doing really well. But it seems to me that losing a guy who was still one of the best players in football when he retired, a guy who was a heartbeat of not only the team, but the town, a guy who you're a vaguely Philly guy. Are you a Philly guy or just a PA guy?
I'm a Philly guy. I'm certainly not a Steelers guy or Pittsburgh guy.
No, I know that, but I said but you're not there's been debates about whether or not what a Philly guy is. You didn't grow up in your post.
No, I did not grow up in Philadelphia proper. I see what you're saying. I got what you're saying.
Yeah. You know the Eagles really well, but does anyone have a higher approval rating?
No,
ever
in the world, dude.
No town embraced an athlete like Jason Kelce.
I think if in the event of the second coming of Jesus Christ,
yes,
the only place that would be anti-Jesus would be Philadelphia, and because Jason Kelce already handled us, we're fine. Salvation has been brought into the world, so it is Kelce in Philadelphia. Waters part, man, for that dude, and deservedly so. There's no one I love like I love Jason Kelce.
When I went to Eagles practice in 2017, they got to the Super Bowl. They practiced at the Angel Stadium. And Kobe Bryant did a team talk in the morning at the hotel. Came down, did a great team talk. Everybody was fired up. The beats were fired up. A couple of media saw him because they were at the team hotel to do other activities. Everybody was fired up. But there emerged in the basement baseball dugout where the media was sitting watching practice. There emerged a debate about whether or not Kobe was a Philly guy that reached unbelievable boiling point levels. People as there was a TV guy and he was arguing. Sheil was there, but I think he was just kind of throwing lobs from the outside. And I remember at one point, one of the TV guys started to argue something about Lower Merion High School. And Jeff McClain just comes in and just says, excuse me, are you a Philly guy? And the guy was like,
quick ID check.
Not officially. And he's like, okay. And then they went back to arguing whether or not. It was so amazing. It was one of the best things I've ever seen at a NFL
Whenever
event.
I meet somebody in the context of here's Ben, he's also from Pennsylvania. Here's Ben, he's also an Eagles fan. I'm always like, yep, I'm from Northeast Pennsylvania. I'm from the Poconos, Northeast PA. Very clear. I'm not claiming to be anything that I'm not. I'm from the same side of the state, not the city proper of Philadelphia.
I do get that those sort of ID checks with Miami, with University of Miami. It's like, oh, are you a Miami guy? And it's like, well, I went to school there. My family, not donated, wrote a big old tuition check so I could say I'm a Miami guy, but it doesn't matter. Don't have a 305 area code. Got to move on. All right. Anyway, Cam Jurgens does what? What does he need to do? What does he need a whole serve?
And so it's almost impossible to hold serve. There isn't anything about the Eagles offense that wasn't centered around the idea of having Jason Kelce, which might feel like hyperbole, and it's not. Their running game was the thesis statement of their running game was, what if we have the most unique center in the league? What if we have a center who can do things that nobody else can? He can pull like a fullback. What should we do as an offense. And it was like, okay, we'll design these runs and we'll have him the amount of adjustment they did in the running game. Every time they walked up to the line, they would change blocking schemes, right? They would just communicate guards and tackles. Okay, you take him, we're gonna float into him, he's gonna pull, you're gonna climb up to him, whatever. They would change it on the fly because they had a coach on the field. Like Jason could just tell him, I point him, here's he's gonna that way. There's that famous clip from last year against the Chiefs where Hurts goes to walk the line to audible and Kelce waves him off. Kelce turns around in like he's squatting, holding the ball, and he turns and looks over his shoulder, and is like, nope. We are going that way. You are wrong. Like that level of impact at the line of scrimmage cannot be overstated. The way they designed the running game around him, it cannot be overstated. Like, and then obviously leadership in the locker room. So I don't even think you can hold serve. What you have to do is not be a liability. You can't be giving up the pressures on 3rd and 8 that undersized centers typically give up to big defensive tackles, because then people will see you be like damaging in that moment. There's gonna be like, oh, Jason Kelce would have never done this. You know, this is the absence of Jason Kelce. So like, barely holding serve, just like not being put on skates, not being put on somebody's highlight reel. Like that's the thing for Jurgens. It's gonna be a disappointment no matter what. Just don't be like, deleterious to the team in a key moment.
That's a great plan. That's a great plan. Like you cannot replace Jason Kelce, but I don't think he's going to. And I don't think the offense is going to change. So it's going to be a little bit different. My just sincere hope is that if they start getting in a tailspin, Nick Sirianni can just figure it out. Just figure out. I don't know what you do. What do you do when you're in a tailspin? You bring the controls down or up? Well, no, you press the stop spinning button.
I've not watched enough Top Gun movies to know what you do in a tailspin. By which you mean I've watched 0 Top Gun movies, so I don't have this information.
I recommend you watching Top Gun movies.
I've heard they're good, much like all the other movies I haven't watched.
Top Gun's really good. There's only 2. There's only 2. You could bang this out later today. It's only 1 p.m. All right, so I have a guy I want to talk about this real quick because there's some breaking news here I want to react to. Because mine is Brandon Aiyuk.
Did it happen?
It did not happen.
Don't do that to me.
Well, the listener already knows it didn't happen, or it did happen in the interim. We have to do a recorded topper saying, "Hey, gang, after this was recorded, like we have to do that."
I'm
right?
not enjoying the delay here. I'd like to know the news.
Then you know how I feel when you logged on with a bad internet connection and I was 30 seconds late to everything.
Fair. Okay. The score's 1-1. What happened to Brandon?
Why don't I just read the freaking tweet, okay?
It's up.
The Steelers have a deal on a potential trade, and Pittsburgh is in a good place on an Aiyuk contract, sources say. If SF gives the final sign-off, it is done. Everything is done. SF concurrently, I put in concurrently, because there's a different line break here, has an offer out to Aiyuk on a long-term deal for him to stay. He has not accepted. So that's it. It appears it's binary. He either accepts the deal or he goes to Pittsburgh. That appears to be the situation. So it's either waiting on him to do this.
Gosh,
to me, yes.
Should I stay in the team where I've been elite and go to the Super Bowl every year under Kyle Shanahan, or should I relocate to Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson? It's just such a challenging decision for me.
Wait, can I say I have a couple of questions about that.
Okay.
Number one, I kind of feel like not to ever question their ball knowledge, especially I think a lot of times guys don't watch ball on their side of the ball. So like I remember interviewing Jimmy Garoppolo years ago, and he said when he got hurt for the first time, he was like watching other offenses.
Right.
Because you just don't do it. You just don't do it. You watch defenses. And I think when he was hurt, Mike Shanahan flew in and just like they watched different concepts with other people just to make use of it, right? I don't know if Brandon Aiyuk has the same feelings about Russell Wilson that we do. That's what I would say about that.
Great point. I absolutely agree with that.
Like I think it's like, okay, he's done it before. He's won a Super Bowl. You remember the highs. It's not like Brandon Aiyuk is sitting there watching you and Orlovsky's cut-ups of Russell Wilson. I'll just say that, okay?
Just grinding the Week 11 Broncos film. Be like, this isn't it.
No, you're just like, Russ has done it. You know, Russ knows how to get the ball downfield. Like, it's fine. Like, also, there's a credibility there, you know? And it's like, I always think a lot about, I have this thing called the Carmelo zone. I used to talk about it at The Ringer, where it's when the media cares more about a player than the league does. And it comes from when Carmelo would always be a free agent, and everybody, like the jump would always be like, where's Carmelo going? And meanwhile, like no one in the NBA actually cares where Carmelo goes. And like Julio Jones was that for a couple of years, where it's like the media I would say maybe Odell Beckham Jr. is there at the moment, where it's like,
that's fair.
It's a big headline, but like the league has shown they're not that into the idea of Odell Beckham Jr. Anyway, the point of that is that a lot of times the players actually default to wanting to play with your Odell Beckhams, wanting to play with your Julio Joneses because there's the credibility there. So Russell Wilson, they could be in that bucket. I'm getting off track here. Brandon Aiyuk swings the Super Bowl because I think he is, first of all, like Matt Harmon did a thing a couple weeks ago, figuring out what route he was good at. The answer is everything. He's good at everything. Yeah. He is just an unbelievable receiver. Kyle Shanahan knows how to make life easy for quarterbacks. Brandon Aiyuk's existence is part of that. If they lose him, they fall back to the Packers of the world, to the Lions of the world, I would never put them in the same category as the Cowboys, but the gap gets closer. The Rams get closer. Not the same line of contender, but they get closer. It is a massive swing in the NFC if Brandon Aiyuk isn't playing there.
Yeah, I think Aiyuk is the name that would have had to been set in this pile. Like if you didn't have him, he was going to be my third. Like this is it. The Niners offense changes categorically. Like its nature changes without him there because he is the like bona fide receiver. Debo's like the cool receiver who we do funky stuff with and you don't know what's going on. But the actual like lineup 1-on-1, 2nd and 15, we need to actually get the ball down the field here. Like that player is Brandon Aiyuk. And if you remember what Shanahan's offense was with Julio Jones in Atlanta, right? We're like, we're trying to make this offense into something, play action, whatever. Once you introduce like a Julio into the offense, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, we're just going to go full Terminator. Like this is kind of the last of the Infinity Stones here. This is what really unlocks everything. It's just having a guy who can win independent of all the Shanahan machinations. He's obviously gotten a lot better. Shanahan has a coaching offense and the offense has changed a ton, but still like it is so valuable to this tricky gamesmanship, unique, a Shanahan offense, this way of thinking about football. It is so valuable. They're so good at figuring out pass protection help and yards after the catch help and ways to make the running game work. But the one thing that you can't account for, you can't conjure from nothingness, is just the elite receiver beating your best corner, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if they lose Brandon Aiyuk, they lose that. So it is a tectonic shift for the Niners, right? Like you say, falling down to the NFC level. I don't think it really, like if he ends up in Pittsburgh, I don't think that changes much for me. For, like,
doesn't change a damn thing.
In the NFC, it's meaningful.
For the Super Bowl.
Yes,
for the Super Bowl. It changes some things within the AFC North or whatever, but like that's not that interesting to me. We're not doing AFC North swing states, the swing states of the AFC North. We're not doing that. All right, what's your last guy?
All right, I wanted to make sure I got one kind of role player in there. I did a coach, I did a quarterback, and I wanted to do role player. Would you dealer's choice? You want the Green Bay guy? Or you want the Ravens guy?
We've talked a lot about the Packers this summer. Let's do the Ravens.
All right. I think Zay Flowers taking a year 2 jump is extremely important in Baltimore. Zay Flowers, some really good film and some really good moments there in Baltimore. Right now, obviously, ends on a wrong note. We have the fumble at the goal line. The game against the Chiefs, are they going to come back? Like you don't reach for the goal line. Of course, you don't reach for the goal line, but I really get why the rookie against the Chiefs in the playoffs was reaching for the goal line. It was an incredible play by L'Jarius Sneed. So it ends on a bit of a sour note, but in general, a very splashy year 1. Now, it a little bit had to be splashy because they were kind of using him as a little bit of a more gadgety sort of a player. He was getting a ton of his targets at or behind line of scrimmage, and they're using him as an extension of the running game and a yards after the catch sort of a guy. When they would throw him the football, there's a lot of deep shots or isolations outside of the numbers, which are grown-up routes, absolutely, but it's more your speed threat, wide receiver 2 menu of routes, as opposed to your 3-level wide receiver 1 working over the middle of the field, what you typically see from the top guys. And that's because Zay's undersized. He's not the biggest dude in the field, so you don't really want to use him that way if you can avoid it. However, Baltimore, loses some defensive coaches this year, loses some offensive linemen this year. They had to account for that. They didn't have a ton of cap space, whatever. Listen, they weren't able to add anybody at wide receiver. I think this team would have really liked to have added a consistent wide receiver 2 and a guy who's a bigger body. Todd Monken wants to use more wide receivers, and certainly they love having the 2 tight ends of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, and then the fullback tight end hybrid offensive lineman and Patrick Ricard. They love those packages. I'm certain they do, but every team wants to be able to field 3 receivers and actually be happy with that group. And I think right now you're looking at fielding Zay Flowers into Rashad Bateman into Nelson Aguilar as that 3 receiver group, maybe Tez Walker, the 4th round pick at UNC. You're just that is not a strong group. And so it is very important to this team who it's likely that they're going to be giving up some more points on defense because of some of the departures. That's probably going to be a worse unit. It's likely they're going to be facing more 3rd and longs because the offensive line isn't as good, and the running game is potentially going to take a step back. Gus Edwards is gone. John Simpson is gone. Ronnie Stanley's still banged up. Morgan Moses is gone. Because of some of the deficiencies elsewhere, the Ravens drop back passing game, which was just starting to like come around the corner last year over the course of the season. It wasn't even that great for many stretches. That's going to be tested even more this season. And if they're going to make a Super Bowl push, they need to be able to make Zay Flowers like a true, like not just 1,000-yard receiver, but like 1,200-yard receiver. He needs to have like 8 catches on 11 targets sort of games. And they just weren't using him in that volume in that way last season, but there's nobody else on the roster. I kind of still a little bit believe in Rashad Bateman, but there's nobody else on the roster who can fit those shoes, right? Okay, Mark Andrews, and no, it's got to be a wideout and it's got to be Zay. That's the guy they've invested in. So Zay Flowers, a big year 2 leap from him would help cover up a lot of the areas where the Ravens got just a little bit worse this season.
I talked to someone who knows the Ravens when I was in Baltimore, and I said, what's the biggest concern here? And they said, well, they looked at it 2 ways. The number one concern by far is the brain drain on the defensive side. You lose Mike McDonald, you lose the new Titans defensive coordinator,
John Wilson, not Deshae Townsend.
No, Denard Wilson.
Denard Wilson, yeah.
And obviously Zach Orr, well liked by the players, part of that staff, and I think he's really good. We have to see it in concept there, but this person said, so you have that, but it's possible Kyle Hamilton is so damn good that he takes a leap that negates the brain drain, right? And we're not talking about Mike McDonald's departure at all, even though Mike McDonald's a very good coach. What we're talking about instead is Kyle Hamilton just taking over that defense and becoming the latest, like obviously he's already great, but like a legendary Ravens type defender. I think that's the interesting push and pull of the 2024 Ravens.
Yeah. I really like that. Like I have a lot of confidence in Zach Orr because they have Anthony Weaver depart. They have Denard Wilson depart, but the guy they tagged to be the guy coming up is Zio, right? They say, okay, Zach Orr's going to be our defensive coordinator. He still has Justin Madubuike. He still has Roquan Smith. He still has Kyle Hamilton. I'm less worried about the Ravens defense than a lot of people are. I think it's going to be worse, but I think if Mike McDonald had stayed and all the position coaches had stayed, guess what? I would have told you it's probably going to be a little bit worse this year because defense tends to regress. Defense tends to be volatile. And so I don't think the floor is going to fall out from them. I have a lot of faith in that defense. Offensively, they are still evolving. And that's the thing that is very interesting to me. Like Lamar has won 2 MVPs. And what's the first thing out of anybody's mouth when people talk about the Ravens? Oh, what if the line's worse? Oh, what if the defense is worse? That's not how we talk about MVP quarterbacks. That's not how we talk about Rodgers when he was winning MVPs, Mahomes when he was MVPs. We started every single Chiefs bit, every single Packers bit with, well, they got the MVP, so you got to believe them. You got to trust them. Lamar doesn't get that. And it's because their offense is stylistically so different than what we're accustomed to seeing. And the way that it burgeons and it blossoms and it becomes more of what we think of in terms of completely dominant offenses is if they have a wide receiver one that's just a headache every single day of the week. So I thought about a Kyle Hamilton. I thought about a Zach Orr, but I wanted to highlight Zay Flowers because I think his improvement is critical.
This was fun, buddy. We're back at it.
Super Bowl.
All right. Ben Solak, thanks so much. We'll have you back very soon. Have a good little Tuesday afternoon, buddy.
Thanks, Clark. Or Kevin, my bad. Yeah.